Welcome to Shadow's team. If you found your way here tonight, don't worry. You're exactly where you're meant to be. Tonight's theme is one that hides behind polite smiles and perfect homes. The kind of nightmare that doesn't wait in the woods or the dark. It waits inside someone's house. 3 au pairs, 3 jobs that promised comfort, family, safety, and 3 lives that learned how easily trust can turn into something else, something wrong. These aren't haunted mansions or cursed objects. They're stories about what happens when you live inside someone else's secret and realize too late that you're part of it. Soft breath, tone lowers slightly. Most people hear stories like these, then move on. They forget to subscribe, as if pretending they never listened will make the feeling go away. But it never really does it? So before we begin, tell me, what time is it where you are right now and where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I read them all. You might want to leave a light on for this one. Let's begin. The first night I woke up because the hallway light was on. I was sure I'd turned it off before bed. I always do. It wasn't bright. Just that dull yellow glow that leaks under the door, cutting a thin line across the carpet. But it was enough to tell me someone was moving out there. I heard soft creaks, floorboards settling, or footsteps. I couldn't tell which. I lay still, pretending to be asleep. My heart was pounding so hard it made the pillow vibrate. The twins' room was next to mine. 2 little girls I'd only met that afternoon. Sweet, quiet, polite to the point of eerie. They'd shown me their dolls. Identical ones with porcelain faces and cracked lips. "Don't leave them alone in the dark," the older one, Margot, had whispered before bed. "They don't like it." I thought she was just being imaginative. Now hearing the floor groan outside my door at 3 a.m., I wasn't so sure. The house was ancient, cold, even with the radiators on. The family lived in a small French village surrounded by fog and old stone walls that smelled like rain and mold. They'd told me it used to be part of a monastery. The parents, Hélène and Marc, seemed nice enough, if a little distant. They'd hired me through an agency to look after the twins while they worked abroad for a few weeks. I'd only been there 12 hours when the house started breathing around me. I told myself it was nothing. Old pipes. Wood expanding. The usual. But the noise didn't stop. It moved, step by step closer to my door. I watched the light's reflection on the handle. It trembled slightly as if someone's hand hovered over it. Then it went still. I didn't move. Didn't breathe, and then like a sigh through the crack I heard it. A voice. A child's whisper. "Go back to sleep." I froze. That's all it said. Just those words, low and calm. "Go back to sleep." I waited, straining my ears, but the hallway went silent. The light stayed on until dawn. When I told Aileen about it the next morning over coffee, she barely looked up from her laptop. "Oh, you heard them," she said, as if it was no big deal. "The girls sleepwalk sometimes. Just guide them back to bed if it happens again." I nodded, but something about the way she said "them" stuck with me. The girls, plural, but I'd only heard one voice. By the second night, I was already dreading bedtime. The house made too many noises, tiny cracks and clicks like insects in the walls. I started leaving a nightlight on in my room, though it barely helped. Shadows still gathered in the corners, thick and soft like smoke. Around midnight, I heard a soft knocking. 3 times. Not at the door. From inside the wardrobe. I sat up slowly, the blanket clutched to my chest. "Margot?" I whispered. No answer. I swung my legs out of bed, bare feet sinking into the cold floorboards. My breath fogged in the air. I reached the wardrobe and hesitated, fingers trembling on the handle. Knock, knock, knock. I pulled it open, empty. Just clothes, my coat, a few hangers swaying slightly like they'd been touched. Something scraped across the floor behind me. I turned fast on nothing, just my room still and dim. But the feeling stayed. Someone else was there, watching from behind my eyes. That's when I heard a giggle. It came from the hallway. I ran out, calling the twins' names. Their door was wide open. The moonlight spilled through the window, painting their bed silver. Both girls were fast asleep, faces still, breathing slow and steady. But in the middle of the room, between their 2 beds, one of the dolls was standing upright on the floor. Not lying down, standing, perfectly balanced. Its glass eyes caught the moonlight and glinted like wet stones. I bent down, my hands shaking as I picked it up. It felt warm. Not just from the room, warm like it had been held. The porcelain cheek was almost hot against my palm. I set it back on the shelf and left the room. That night I didn't sleep again. The next morning I noticed something strange. At breakfast, Margot and Leia sat side by side, eating cereal silently. They didn't look at me. When I asked how they'd slept, neither answered. They just stared down at their bowls until Leia muttered, "The woman was loud last night." "What woman?" I asked. Margot's spoon froze midair. "The one who walks," I forced a laugh. "You mean me?" Both girls shook their heads, perfectly in sync. "No," they said together. "The one upstairs." But there was no upstairs. Just the attic. After they went to school, I asked Helene about it. She frowned, like I'd brought up something inconvenient. "Oh, that," she said. "They have active imaginations. The attic is locked, don't worry. It's just storage." Still, I noticed the faintest hesitation in her tone. That small pause before "don't worry." The kind adults use when they're lying to a child. That evening, the wind picked up. The shutters rattled against the windows, and the trees outside groaned under the weight of the storm. The family had left for the weekend, leaving me alone with the twins. They went to bed around 9. I double-checked every door, every lock. Then I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. It wasn't. The house had gone too quiet. No wind, no ticking clock, just a heavy silence pressing against the walls. Then came the creak. A long, drawn-out moan of wood from above. From the attic, I told myself not to look, not to go. But my body moved before my brain could stop it. The hallway light flickered as I climbed the narrow stairs. The air grew colder with each step, the kind of cold that feels wet, like fog you can touch. At the top was the attic door, locked, just like Helene said. Only now it was cracked open an inch. I don't remember reaching for the handle. I just remember the sound. A faint lullaby drifting out from the darkness, a slow, sweet, almost tender. French words softly hummed. I didn't understand them, but they made my skin crawl. I pushed the door open. The smell hit first, damp dust, old wood, and something else, metal, like blood. I stepped inside. There was a crib in the middle of the attic. Not covered, not stored away, set up like someone had been using it. The blanket inside was rumpled, and a single mobile hung above it, spinning on its own even though the air was still. I felt the urge to run. Every part of me screamed to get out, but then something behind me whispered, "Don't wake her." I turned. No one there. The door slammed shut. The sound was deafening. I yanked the handle, locked. I started pounding on it, shouting, but my voice felt swallowed by the walls. And then I heard it, a sound that made my bones freeze. Breathing, right next to my ear. Slow, raspy, human. I spun around and saw a shape in the corner, small, child-sized. Its outline shifted, as if it was swaying. The lullaby started again, this time humming from inside my own head. I don't remember running. One moment I was in the attic. The next I was downstairs, barefoot, shaking, gripping the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. My teacup had shattered on the floor. I stared at the shards and realized my hands were bleeding. I didn't even feel it happen. When I finally went back to check the attic the next morning, the door was sealed tight again. The key gone. I convinced myself it was a nightmare. Maybe exhaustion, but when I went to wake the twins, I found something that made me certain I hadn't imagined any of it. On Margot's pillow sat the same porcelain doll from the shelf. Its cracked lips had been painted over, with fresh, bright red. That night, I slept with the light on, phone clutched in my hand, door locked. I tried to stay awake, but exhaustion won. When I opened my eyes again, it was still dark, but I wasn't in bed. I was standing in the hallway, barefoot, facing the twins' door. My hand was on the knob. I don't remember getting up. I pulled my hand back like it was burned. My heart was slamming against my ribs, and when I turned to go back to my room, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There were wet footprints on the floor. Small ones. Leading from the twins' room to mine. I followed them with my eyes. They stopped right in front of my door, and there, pressed against the wood, were 2 small handprints. The skin of my arms went tight. I opened the door slowly, expecting someone there. But the room was empty. The sheets were twisted like I'd fought in my sleep, the wardrobe door wide open again. I stepped closer and felt the air shift. Cold, sharp. like walking into a freezer. And from the shadows, a whisper rose up close to my ear. "She doesn't sleep." I spun around. No one. Just my reflection in the mirror, except it wasn't right. The reflection's mouth was moving, even though mine wasn't. I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the rug. My reflection didn't stumble with me. It just stared, lips still moving in that silent rhythm. The air around me buzzed, a faint ringing in my ears like when a TV's on mute but you can feel the electricity. I blinked hard once, twice, and then it stopped. My reflection was normal again, frozen mid-panic, eyes wide, matching mine. I told myself I was dreaming. I had to be. I backed out of the room, slammed the door, and didn't go back until morning. When the sun rose, the house felt different. Brighter, almost too bright. Sunlight pouring through the kitchen windows like it was trying to burn away what had happened. The girls came down quietly, still in their pajamas. They looked at me with wide, tired eyes. Leia spoke first. "She likes you," she said softly. I tried to smile. "Who does?" Margot's spoon clinked against her bowl. "The woman in the mirror." I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's not funny." They didn't laugh. They just went back to eating like they hadn't said anything at all. The day dragged. I tried cleaning to distract myself, dishes, laundry, anything that made noise. The radio played softly in the background, a French station I couldn't understand but found comforting. Around noon, the signal cut out, replaced by static. Then faintly under the static, I heard my name. Not clearly, more like someone whispering it through a mouthful of air. "Emma!" I froze, leaning closer. "Hello?" The voice stopped. Then, right before the static cut to silence, I heard it again. "Don't go upstairs." I yanked the plug out of the wall. That night, I didn't trust myself to sleep. I locked my door, pulled the dresser in front of it, and sat on the bed with the lamp on. My body felt heavy, my eyelids fighting to close. I must have dozed off because the next thing I remember is hearing music, faint, muffled, coming from above me. That lullaby again. The same one from the attic. It drifted down through the ceiling, soft and sweet. Each note crawled across my skin. I got up, every step slow, careful. The house was pitch black. Even the nightlight had gone out. I crept into the hallway, the floor icy under my feet. The air smelled faintly of dust and lavender, the scent of the twins' room. As I passed their door, I heard whispering inside. Margot and Leia, murmuring in that secret way kids do when they're half asleep. Except this wasn't soft chatter. The voices were low, chanting almost. The same phrase over and over, "Stay awake, stay awake, stay awake." I pushed the door open an inch. The room was dark except for the moonlight spilling across the floor. Both girls were sitting up in bed, eyes open, staring straight ahead. Their lips moved in unison. "Stay awake, stay awake." My throat went dry. "Girls?" They turned toward me slowly. Their faces were blank, eyes glassy like dolls. Then, at the exact same time, they smiled. "Too late," they said together. The light flickered, once, twice, and the lullaby from upstairs stopped mid-note. I ran back to my room and locked the door again. I stayed awake until dawn, too scared to move, too scared to breathe. The sun finally rose pale and cold through the curtains. I told myself I'd pack and leave. Screw the agency, screw the job. But when I went downstairs, my suitcase was gone. I searched everywhere. Hallway, closet, laundry room. Nothing. The twins were already eating breakfast, quiet as usual. "Did you move my bag?" I asked. Leia looked up. "It's in her room now." "Whose room?" Margot didn't look at me. "The one that doesn't sleep." My skin prickled. I didn't ask again. Around noon, a delivery van pulled up outside, and groceries, I thought. I went to the front door, grateful for any human contact. But the man didn't look at me when I opened it. He just placed a small cardboard box on the step, nodded once, and left without a word. No logo on the van. No receipt. I brought the box inside. No return address, no name. Just a tag with my initials. EM. Inside were 3 things: a baby monitor, a folded piece of paper, and a tiny silver key. The paper had one sentence written in shaky handwriting. "You shouldn't have gone in the attic." I swear, I almost threw the whole thing out the window. But curiosity, fear, whatever it was, made me take the baby monitor upstairs. One of those old-fashioned ones with an analog dial. I plugged it in just to see what would happen. At first, only static. Then faint breathing, not mine. slow, rhythmic. I turned the volume down. The breathing grew louder. I unplugged it and stuffed it back in the box. But that night, when I went to bed, I could still hear the breathing. Not through the monitor, but from inside the walls. At around 3 a.m., I woke to whispering again. Not the twins this time. Deeper, closer, coming from right above me. I looked up, heart pounding. The ceiling light swayed slightly, though there was no draft. A thud echoed, soft, deliberate, like someone dragging something heavy across the attic floor. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it upward. The sound stopped. Then something tapped back. 3 short taps in perfect rhythm with my heartbeat. That was it. I wasn't staying another night. I started packing whatever I could into a tote. Passport, charger, wallet. I'd call a taxi at sunrise. I didn't care about the agency or the deposit or the rules, but when I turned to grab my phone, it wasn't on the nightstand anymore. It was sitting on the floor, screen cracked, camera facing upward, like it had been dropped from above. And there, in the faint reflection of the screen, was a face behind mine. A woman's face, pale, blurred, watching. I screamed, stumbled backward, hit the wall. The reflection vanished. My phone buzzed suddenly, even though it was clearly broken. One new message. Unknown number. I opened it. It was a photo of me sleeping. Taken from the foot of my bed, I dropped the phone. Morning came like nothing had happened. The sun was gentle, the air smelled of bread and coffee. I almost believed it had been another hallucination. But when I went to wake the twins, their beds were empty. The covers were neat, perfectly folded. Their shoes gone. On the pillow lay the silver key from the box. I followed instinct, not logic. My hands shook as I climbed the stairs to the attic. The door was unlocked now. The key slid into the lock easily, like it had been waiting for me. Inside, everything looked exactly as before. The crib, the mobile, dust floating in thin beams of light. Only one thing had changed. The blanket in the crib was moving. Not violently, just slowly, rhythmically, like someone breathing underneath it. I stepped closer, unable to stop myself. Every nerve in my body screamed to run, but something deeper pulled me in. The air was thick, wet with that metallic smell again. I reached out and lifted the edge of the blanket. Nothing there. Just a hollow space and a single porcelain doll lying on its back, eyes open, smiling. I stood there staring at it, and that's when I heard footsteps behind me. Small ones. I turned. Margot and Leia stood in the doorway holding hands. Their faces were blank. "Go back to sleep," they said together. Then, from somewhere deeper in the attic, the darkness behind the crib, another voice echoed them. Older, hoarse. "Go back to sleep." The girls' eyes rolled back, and they collapsed where they stood. I don't remember how I got them downstairs. I just remember carrying them one by one, their small hands cold against my neck. I laid them on the sofa and called the only number I had, Helene's. She answered on the second ring, sounding almost bored. "Emma? You shouldn't be calling." "There's something wrong with the house," I said, trying not to cry. "The girls fainted and—" "They'll wake up," she interrupted. "They always do. What are you talking about?" "What's happening here?" A long pause. Then quietly, "She doesn't like new people in her house." And then the line went dead. The twins woke around an hour later. They acted like nothing had happened. No memory of fainting, no memory of the attic. I tried asking them questions, but they just smiled. "We told you not to go up there," Leia said softly, tracing her finger along the sofa armrest. "Now she knows your name." "Who?" I asked. My voice cracked. They looked at each other. Then Margot whispered, "The woman who never sleeps." That night I didn't even bother going to bed. I sat on the stairs with every light on, watching the hallway. The house was too quiet again. That same heavy silence, thick enough to choke on. Around 3:11 a.m., the air changed. A low hum filled the room, the kind you feel in your chest more than you hear. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out. I turned on my phone flashlight. The beam hit the far end of the hallway and then stopped on a figure, a woman. Thin, tall, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Her face was hidden by her hair, but I could see her hands, pale, almost gray, fingers twitching. She stood perfectly still, but the shadows behind her moved like water. She raised her hand and pointed at me. Then she whispered, "Stay awake." The words slithered through the air, wrong and broken. I ran down the hall into the kitchen, slammed the back door. Cold air hit me like a slap. I didn't look back. I sprinted through the yard barefoot, over the wet grass, past the stone wall until the house disappeared behind the trees. But even then, even outside, I could still hear it. The faint hum, the lullaby, following me. I didn't stop running until the house was gone. By the time I reached the road, my lungs were burning and my feet were bleeding. The village was still asleep, not a single light in the windows. Just the wind and that low hum still vibrating in my ears. I stood there shaking, looking back at the darkness where the house hid behind the trees. It looked smaller from here, normal, like all of it could have been in my head. But then my phone buzzed. A message, no number, just one line, "Come back, they're awake." I should have kept running. Any sane person would have. But the thought of the twins, those two little girls standing alone in that house, and it clawed at me. Maybe I was scared for them. Maybe I was scared of what they'd become if I didn't go back. By the time the sun rose, I was walking up the driveway again. The house looked different in daylight. Pale gray stone, ivy crawling up the sides, every window shut tight. No sound, no movement. The kind of stillness that feels staged, like a photograph pretending to be real life. The front door was unlocked. Inside, everything was where I'd left it, except the air felt heavier, warmer. The smell of dust and lavender was gone, replaced by something faintly sweet and rotten like spoiled milk. "Margot?" I called out. "Leia?" Silence. I climbed the stairs, calling again, louder. Halfway up, I heard humming. That same lullaby. It was coming from my room. My bed was made. The sheets perfectly smooth, the pillows fluffed. On the pillow sat my phone, screen cracked, battery dead, and beside it a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it with trembling hands. It was written in a child's handwriting. "She doesn't want you to leave." My stomach twisted. I turned toward the door and froze. The mirror across the room was fogged over, like someone had been breathing against it. Slowly, letters began to appear, drawn by an invisible finger. "Stay. Awake." I bolted out of the room. Downstairs, the kitchen clock ticked faintly, 3:11. Not morning this time, afternoon, but still that number. When I opened the fridge to grab water, I saw it. Inside, on the top shelf between 2 bottles of milk, a porcelain doll. Its eyes followed me as I backed away. The twins' laughter echoed from somewhere deeper in the house. Soft, distant, echoing through the walls. I followed the sound into the living room. Empty. Then the dining room, empty too. But the laughter was still there, bouncing around the walls like it was coming from everywhere at once. "Girls?" I called again, voice shaking. "Where are you?" "In here," Leia's voice sang. It came from the basement. I hesitated at the door. I'd never been down there. The light switch didn't work, so I turned on my phone's flashlight. The screen flickered, but it worked just enough. The air grew damp as I descended, heavy with that metallic smell again. The basement was bigger than I expected. Stone walls, an old boiler, shelves stacked with jars of preserves. My light caught on something painted across the far wall, a series of handprints, small ones smeared in dark brown. They formed a pattern, a circle with symbols inside. At the center sat another crib, smaller, older, and inside it, the twins' dolls, both of them lying side by side, arms folded across their chests like tiny corpses. I felt something move behind me, a soft shuffle. I turned slowly. Margot and Leia stood at the bottom of the stairs holding hands. They looked almost peaceful, except their eyes were wrong. Too dark, too hollow. "You came back," Margot whispered. "Why?" Leia asked. "You weren't supposed to." I didn't know what to say. "Because I was worried about you." They tilted their heads at the same time. "You shouldn't worry," Margot said. "She takes care of us now," Leia added. "Who?" I whispered. "The woman who never sleeps." They stepped aside and I saw her, standing in the far corner, half hidden by shadows. The woman from the hallway. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Her hair hung like wet ropes down her face. Her skin was gray, stretched too thin. I couldn't see her eyes, only the outline of them, deep, hollow spaces. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. She raised her hand, the same slow gesture as before, and pointed at me. The twins spoke again, voices overlapping. "She's tired, Emma. You have to help her rest." The woman's head twitched once, then again, faster. The humming started, and the lullaby, louder this time, vibrating through the floorboards. "Please," I whispered. What do you want from me?" The woman stepped forward. Her movements were jerky like a puppet on strings. When she lifted her head, I saw her mouth. It wasn't a mouth anymore, just a dark split that ran too far across her face. And then she spoke, in a voice that wasn't hers, wasn't human. "Don't sleep." The lights went out. When I woke, I was lying on the floor. The basement was empty. The crib was gone. The twins were gone. The smell of metal and rot lingered in the air. My head throbbed like I'd been hit. I crawled up the stairs into the daylight. Every shadow in the house felt alive, watching. My phone was on the counter and somehow charged again. The time read 3:11 again. 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Then a new message. "Check the video." There was a new file on my phone, one I didn't remember recording. I pressed play with shaking fingers. The video showed my room, filmed from the corner near the ceiling. Me asleep in bed, then movement. The door opening. The twins walking in side by side holding hands. They stopped by my bed, just staring at me for a while. Then they both looked up, toward whoever was holding the camera, and smiled. The video ended. I ran outside again, desperate for air, for noise, for anything that wasn't silence. The road was empty. My car, still parked by the gate, looked foreign now, like it belonged to a different life. I jumped in, turned the key, it's nothing. Dead. When I looked up, I saw movement in the rearview mirror. In the back seat. For a split second, I saw her, the woman, had crouched behind me, face inches from mine. Her reflection didn't move when I turned. She smiled, teeth like cracks in porcelain, and whispered, "Stay awake." I threw the door open and ran. I didn't care where, through the trees, across the fields, until I hit the edge of the village. My lungs screamed, my body shaking so hard I thought I'd collapse. I pounded on the nearest door until an old man answered. I must have looked insane, barefoot, covered in dirt, bleeding. I told him everything. At first he didn't react, just stared at me with this strange pity. Then he said, "You were in the Monnier house." I nodded, still gasping. He crossed himself and muttered something in French. "That house, it doesn't keep time like ours." "What do you mean?" He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "The woman who built it lost her children. Twins. They say she walked the halls every night waiting for them to wake up. When she died, she didn't stop." He brought me inside, gave me water, made me sit by the fire. The warmth barely touched me. I kept hearing it. The faint echo of that lullaby somewhere far off, like it was carried by the wind. The man's wife joined us. When she heard what happened, she shook her head. "You should not have stayed overnight. That house remembers. It keeps things that don't belong." I asked about the twins. "Real living twins. The ones I'd looked after." The woman's face went pale. "There haven't been children there in years." I stared at her. "That's not possible. I was hired by their parents, Elaine and Mark. They're dead," the old man said. "Buried 30 years ago." Something inside me cracked then. Something small and fragile that had been holding me together. I sat there shaking while the old couple whispered to each other in French. The woman finally handed me a small cross and told me to keep it close. "Don't dream," she said. "If she finds you sleeping, she'll stay." I nodded, pretending to understand. But I knew it was already too late, because when I looked down at my hands, they weren't shaking anymore. They were still. Cold. And under my fingernails was something dry and dark. Dust, mixed with flakes of white. Porcelain. That night, they let me sleep in their spare room. I lay awake for hours watching the ceiling, trying to believe I was safe. Around 3:11 a.m., I must have drifted off, because when I opened my eyes, the room was different. Darker. The smell of lavender and dust was back, and at the foot of the bed, the twins were standing. Holding hands, smiling. "Emma," Leia whispered. "She says you can rest now." Margot tilted her head. "But only if you stay with us." Behind them, in the shadows, something moved. The outline of a woman crawling slowly toward the bed. Her breath filled the room, wet and ragged. I reached for the lamp, nothing, dead. My phone, gone. My body refused to move. Like the air itself was pressing me down. The woman's face lifted into the dim light, her eyes a black pits. Her mouth still moving, whispering words I couldn't hear. And then she smiled and I heard it again. That voice that wasn't hers, wasn't human. "Don't sleep," the twins started humming. The same lullaby. Over and over. The last thing I remember is the sound of the door clicking shut. From the inside, When I woke, the world was wrong. The air was thick and wet, like breathing through cloth. My skin stuck to the sheets. For a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I saw the wallpaper, pale green with little white flowers, and the smell hit me. Lavender, dust, and old wood. I was back in the Monnier house. My throat closed up. I sat up slowly, my hands shaking. The room looked exactly as it had before. My bag in the corner, my jacket draped over the chair. But everything had a thin film of dust like it hadn't been touched in years. "Hello?" I whispered. No answer. I tried my phone, dead again. When I looked at the clock on the nightstand, it said 3:11. Of course it did. I pushed myself out of bed and opened the door. The hallway stretched out in front of me, darker than I remembered. The lights flickered weakly, humming with static. Every step I took made the floor sigh, long and tired. Somewhere down the hall, a door creaked open. Then, faintly, I heard it. The twins' laughter. I followed it, even though every part of me screamed not to. The sound led me to their room. The door was open just a crack and soft light spilled through. Inside, both girls were sitting on the floor facing the window. The dolls were lined up in front of them in a perfect row. They were humming. That same lullaby, the one I couldn't get out of my head. When I stepped inside, they stopped. Slowly, both heads turned toward me. "You came back," Leia said. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Where am I? What happened?" Margot tilted her head. "You fell asleep." The words made my stomach twist. I was in the village," I said. "There was an old man, his wife. They said you—" "They were dreaming," Leia interrupted. Her voice was soft but sharp. "Everyone here dreams." I took a step back. "Where's your mother?" "She's resting," Margot said. "In the attic," Leia added, smiling. Something inside me snapped. I ran. Out of their room, down the stairs, through the hall, but the house didn't let me go. Every hallway turned into another hallway. Doors opened to the same rooms I'd just left. I screamed until my throat went raw. Then suddenly, silence. I was standing in front of the mirror at the end of the hall. My reflection blinked, and half a second before I did, I froze. The reflection smiled. "You shouldn't have come back," it said. Its voice was mine, but deeper, older. "She doesn't like when people leave." My hand lifted on its own. Not in the mirror, in real life. Like something was pulling invisible strings. I tried to fight it, but my arm moved anyway, reaching toward the glass. The reflection pressed its palm against mine. The glass was warm. Too warm. Then the surface rippled, like water, and my reflection whispered, "Wake up." The world shattered. For a heartbeat, I wasn't in the hallway anymore. I was in the attic again, standing over the crib. The mobile spun slowly above it, casting moving shadows across the walls. Inside the crib wasn't a doll this time. It was a child. A little girl, her skin gray and translucent. Her eyes open but empty. She looked up at me. Her lips moved. "Mommy?" I stumbled back, shaking my head. No. Behind me, I heard footsteps in slow dragging. The woman's voice filled the room closer than ever. "She never slept," she whispered. "So neither can you." The attic walls began to pulse, breathing in and out. The light flickered, the air thick with that sweet, rotting scent. I turned toward the door, but the twins were blocking it. Their faces blank, eyes dark. "She's tired," Margot said. "She wants you to take her place," Leia finished. I backed away, my spine hitting the wall. "Why me?" I whispered. "Because you stayed," they said together. "Everyone else leaves." The woman appeared behind them. The thing that had once been her. Her head tilted to the side, her hair falling like wet curtains. I could see her face now, clear as daylight. And it wasn't monstrous, not exactly. Just exhausted. Hollow. Her eyes sunk deep, her mouth cracked from too many nights whispering lullabies into an empty house. She reached out a trembling hand. "I just need to rest," she said. "Please." Something inside me broke. Fear, pity, I don't know. I stepped forward before I could stop myself. Her hand brushed my cheek, and for a moment the world went quiet. Peaceful. Then I saw it. Flashes behind my eyes. The twins crying in the dark. The woman walking the halls night after night searching. The attic door slamming shut from the inside. Her body swinging from the beam above the crib, and two tiny faces staring up at her from below. When she died, she didn't stop searching. I pulled away, gasping. The attic spun around me. I can't help you, I said. You're not real. The woman's smile cracked wider. I'm awake, she whispered. You're the one dreaming. The floor gave way. The world dropped out from under me. When I opened my eyes again, I was standing in the kitchen. Morning light streamed through the window. The house looked normal, clean, warm, alive. The twins sat at the table eating cereal. They looked up and smiled. Morning, Emma, Leia said cheerfully. You slept late, Margot added. For a second, I almost believed it. Almost. Then I saw the clock on the wall. 3:11, the milk in their bowls was red. I backed away slowly. My breath came in short bursts. I'm leaving, I said. I'm done. Neither of them stopped me. They just kept eating, their spoons clinking softly against the bowls. I grabbed my bag and ran to the front door. It opened easily, too easily. Outside, the air was still. The road was gone. In its place stretched a long, endless field of gray grass, waving soundlessly. No sun, no clouds, just pale light from nowhere. The house loomed behind me, its windows watching. I turned back and saw my reflection in the glass door. But it wasn't matching me anymore. It was smiling. Don't leave her alone, it whispered. Then it stepped forward, out of the reflection, and I felt a hand grab my shoulder. I don't remember screaming, but my throat hurts now. My voice is gone. The house is quiet again. The twins are asleep upstairs, tucked in neatly. The woman, she's resting. I can hear her breathing through the walls. Sometimes I think I can still see sunlight outside, but when I try to open the door, it's just fog. Endless and pale. I don't know how long I've been here. Days, weeks? Time doesn't move right anymore. The clock still says 3:11, always 3:11, the girls come and go. Sometimes they play, sometimes they hum that lullaby. Sometimes they whisper to me, tell me it's almost over, that I'm doing a good job. They call me Mommy now. I tried not to sleep. I really did. But the house makes you tired. It seeps into your bones, into your breath. The walls whisper, the floor hums, the air rocks you like a cradle. It wants you to close your eyes, and when you do, you forget. I think that's what happened to her. The real au pair, or the woman before her, or the one before that. Maybe there was never a first. Maybe the house has always needed someone awake, someone to keep it from falling asleep completely. Because when it sleeps, it dreams. And its dreams become real. I found a mirror in the attic yesterday. It's cracked down the middle now. The edge is cloudy. When I look into it, I don't see myself anymore. Not really. My face looks older, tired, the skin pale, stretched, my eyes hollow. Sometimes the twins stand behind me watching. They ask if I'm ready to rest yet. I tell them soon because I know now what happens next. When I finally close my eyes, when I stop fighting it, the house will breathe again. It'll wake up. And it'll need someone new, someone else to stay awake. If anyone ever finds this and if anyone ever hears my story, don't come here. Don't take the job. Don't answer any email about a nanny position near Saint Malo. If you see a house with ivy on the walls and lavender in the windows, turn around. It doesn't matter if it's daytime. It doesn't matter if you think it's empty. Because it's not. The house never sleeps. And now neither do I. The first night I heard her crying, I almost went in. It was after midnight and the whole house was quiet except for the sound of rain against the windows. I'd been half asleep when it started. That soft, shaky kind of crying that sounds like a small animal caught in a trap. For a second, I thought it was part of my dream. Then it came again, louder, real. The child's room was right above mine and the sound carried through the floorboards. She wasn't sobbing, it was worse than that. She was whisper crying, like she didn't want anyone to hear. I threw the blanket off and sat up. My heart was pounding. I could still hear her, a steady rhythm between the thunder outside. Every instinct I had told me to go upstairs to check on her, but then I remembered the one rule. Never go to her at night, no matter what you hear. Mrs. Lambert had said it so calmly that I almost laughed when she told me. She'd been standing in the kitchen that afternoon pouring tea like we were discussing nothing at all. If she cries, she said, ignore it. She's prone to episodes. It's better not to intervene. I'd nodded, pretending to understand. It wasn't my place to question. They were paying me well, too well, honestly, and I needed the money. London rent was hell. I told myself the rule was just one of those weird parenting quirks rich people had. But lying there that night, Listening to that sound, that tiny shaking cry, something in me cracked. I swung my legs over the bed and stood up. The house was cold. My room was in the basement level, just off the kitchen, and the light from the fridge was the only thing that made the hallway visible. I moved slowly up the stairs, each step creaking under my feet. The crying stopped. I froze halfway up. The silence that followed was worse. It wasn't just quiet, it was aware. Like the house had been listening to me too. I waited, holding my breath. Then I heard it again, a faint whimper. Then, "Mummy?" The word hit me like ice. Mummy. Soft, pleading. From the child's room. I knew I shouldn't. I knew it. But my hand was already on the doorknob. When I opened the door, the first thing that hit me was the cold. Her room was spotless, too neat for a 7-year-old. Toys lined up like decorations. Stuffed animals sitting in perfect rows on a shelf. The curtains were drawn tight. The only light came from a small lamp on the dresser, glowing a pale yellow. She was sitting up in bed, knees to her chest, her little face hidden behind her hands. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks, damp with tears. "Hey," I whispered, stepping closer. "It's okay. You're safe." She flinched at the sound of my voice and looked up. For a moment, I couldn't move. Her eyes were huge, wide and glassy. But it wasn't just fear in them. It was something older, something that didn't belong to a child. "Go back," she whispered. Her voice didn't sound like the one I'd heard crying. It was lower, flatter. "You shouldn't be here." My heart thudded. "It's okay, sweetheart. I just wanted to make sure you were—" "Go back," she hissed. Her voice cracked, turning into a sob. "Please," I stepped back, startled. Her small hands clutched the blanket so tight her knuckles went white. The air in the room felt heavier suddenly, like the walls had leaned in closer. I didn't know what to say. So I did what Mrs. Lambert told me to do. I turned around and left. When I got back to my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. I could still hear her voice and the way she'd said please like it wasn't a warning, but a plea. The next morning, I tried to bring it up at breakfast. Mr. Lambert was already gone for work, and Mrs. Lambert was sitting by the window with her coffee, scrolling through her phone. Their daughter, the daughter, sat quietly at the table, cutting her toast into tiny squares. I started carefully. "I heard her crying last night. I just wanted to check if she's okay." Mrs. Lambert didn't look up. "I told you she has episodes. It's best to ignore them. I understand, but she's fine," she interrupted sharply, then softer. "It's just how she processes things. Routine is important." I nodded, embarrassed. The girl didn't even glance at me. She just kept slicing her toast over and over, until the pieces looked like crumbs. When she finally did speak, it was so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "She came in," the girl said. Mrs. Lambert's head snapped up. "Excuse me?" The girl looked right at me. Her eyes were calm now, unreadable. "She came into my room. She wasn't supposed to." My stomach dropped. I thought you were upset. Mrs. Lambert stood abruptly. "That's enough." She put a hand on the girl's shoulder and forced a smile. "You'll follow the rules from now on, won't you, Claire?" I swallowed. "Yes, I'm sorry." The girl smiled too. A small, strange smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's okay," she said. "It wasn't your fault. The rest of that day felt wrong. The house was beautiful. White walls, clean lines, quiet luxury. But there was something under it all. Attention. Every door was kept shut, every curtain drawn. There were locks on the outside of her bedroom door. Not big ones. Just little sliding latches painted over to match the trim. And there was one photo missing from every frame in the hallway. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was a design choice, but no, there were outlines. Faint rectangles where pictures had been, faded from the sun. When I asked Mrs. Lambert about it, she just said, "Old memories," and changed the subject. That night, I locked my door before bed. The second night, the crying started earlier. This time I didn't move. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to drown it out. The floor above me creaked softly. Then again, like small feet pacing back and forth. After an hour, it stopped. Then came the whispering, not crying this time, and whispering. Two voices. One high and small, one lower, fainter, like an echo. I pressed my pillow over my head and tried not to listen. By the third day, I was barely sleeping. Mrs. Lambert didn't seem to notice. She spent most of her time in her study with the door closed. Mr. Lambert was gone completely. The girl, her name was Emily, though she never told me that herself, followed a routine so exact it was almost mechanical. Wake up at 7, breakfast at 7:30, reading time until 9, walk in the garden, never past the hedges, lunch, nap, dinner, bed. Every movement quiet, controlled. That afternoon, while she was coloring at the table, I tried again. "Hey, Em," I said softly. "You feeling okay today?" She looked up, her expression blank. "Do you have children?" The question threw me. No, why?" She smiled a little. "You'd be a good mummy," I laughed awkwardly. "Thanks, I guess. Would you stay if they asked you to?" I frowned. "Who?" She tilted her head like she was thinking. "The other ones." Before I could say anything else, Mrs. Lambert's voice came from the hallway. "Emily, piano practice." The girl stood, chair scraping softly against the floor, and left the room without another word. That night, I heard the crying again, but this time, it wasn't upstairs. It was right outside my door. I sat up instantly, my pulse roaring in my ears. The sound was faint, like someone breathing through the keyhole. A small sob. Then in a voice barely a whisper, "Please don't leave me." I didn't move. I couldn't. I stared at the door until my eyes burned. The crying stopped. And then the handle turned. Slow, deliberate. My whole body went cold. The door was locked, but the sound of that handle, the metal clicking, felt like it was inside my skull. Then silence. I stayed like that all night, sitting in the dark, clutching the blanket like it was the only thing keeping me in place. The next morning, there were muddy footprints outside my door. Small ones. I showed them to Mrs. Lambert. She didn't even look down. "She sleepwalks sometimes," she said, sipping her tea. "You should keep your door locked." I did. Her hand froze midair. Then she smiled tightly. "Then it's fine." I wanted to ask more. I wanted to demand an explanation, but something in her face told me not to. There was a twitch in her smile that didn't reach her eyes, something brittle and dangerous. Later that day, I overheard her in the study whispering on the phone. I couldn't catch everything, but I heard enough. She went in the room. "No, not yet. Yes, it's starting again." That night, I dreamt of a woman standing at the foot of my bed. She was holding a child. The child's face was hidden in her shoulder, her hair long and black. The woman looked at me, eyes hollow and tired. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then she reached toward me, and when I woke up gasping, the clock read 3:12 a.m., and from upstairs I heard it again. The soft creak of a door opening. A voice, high and sweet, humming a lullaby I didn't recognize, and beneath it a second voice humming along, lower, cracked, like someone remembering how to breathe. I didn't tell Mrs. Lambert about the lullaby. By morning, I'd convinced myself it had to be a dream. The kind that sticks in your head long after you wake up, blurring with the real, but the whole day felt off. The house was too quiet even for them. Every time I passed a mirror, I caught my own reflection flinching. Emily seemed fine. She sat on the living room carpet drawing pictures while Mrs. Lambert worked in her study. When I brought her a snack, she smiled up at me and said, "You look tired." I didn't sleep much, I admitted. Someone was walking around again. She stopped coloring. "It wasn't me." I hesitated. "Then who was it?" She shrugged and went back to her drawing. "You should lock your door tighter." I bent down to look at what she was sketching, stick figures mostly. A woman, a little girl, a house. But the woman didn't have a face. Her head was just a dark circle filled in with the pencil until the paper nearly tore. "Who's that?" I asked, pointing. She looked at me with those huge, unreadable eyes. "Mummy." That night I dreamt of her again, the woman from the first dream. This time I saw her face clearly. Pale, hollow, skin stretched thin like she hadn't slept in years. She was standing in Emily's room, rocking something invisible in her arms. When she turned toward me, I woke with my heart pounding, my room freezing cold. The clock read 3:10, and then I heard it, the lullaby. Not upstairs this time. Behind my door, my throat closed. I slid quietly out of bed and knelt on the floor, pressing my ear against the wood. The voice was faint, humming softly, then it stopped. A small, deliberate tap followed, like a child's knuckle against the door. "Go to sleep," the voice whispered. It was low, croaky, not a child's voice at all. I backed away until I hit the wall. I don't know how long I stayed there before morning came, but when I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty. Only one thing was different: a folded piece of paper lying on the floor. It was one of Emily's drawings, a stick figure woman standing beside a smaller girl. Underneath, in shaky handwriting, were 3 words: "You promised me." By breakfast, I decided I couldn't stay quiet anymore. When Mrs. Lambert came down, I showed her the paper. She froze when she saw it, the color draining from her face. Then she forced a smile and took it from me. "Children can be dramatic," she said. "Ignore it." "Dramatic?" I said. "She's been wandering at night, whispering outside my room, leaving things. Enough." The word was so sharp it cut through me. Her hand was shaking as she folded the drawing. "You will do your job or you will leave. Do you understand?" Something about the way she said it waked the panic in her eyes and made me stop. I just nodded. She turned away quickly, muttering to herself, "It's too soon. It's happening again." That afternoon I found the attic door. It was hidden behind a tall bookcase at the end of the upstairs hall, a narrow wooden panel with a brass latch. I wouldn't have noticed it if I hadn't seen Emily staring at it earlier. When she realized I'd seen her, she ran off, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Later, while she napped, I slid the bookcase aside. Dust filled the air, thick and gray. The latch was stiff, like it hadn't been opened in years. But when I tugged, it gave way. The attic smelled old, like wood rot and lavender. The air was cold, heavier somehow. I climbed up slowly, holding my phone light out in front of me. That's when I saw the crib. It sat in the middle of the attic, surrounded by boxes. There were toys inside: a teddy bear missing an eye, a rattle, a small pink blanket. Everything covered in dust. Above it, a mobile hung from the ceiling. Faded paper stars still swaying as if someone had just brushed past them. I reached for the blanket and froze. It wasn't dusty like the rest of the things. It was clean, fresh, like it had been washed recently. My stomach twisted. I backed toward the stairs. Just before I climbed down, something caught my eye. A photo frame half buried under a box. The glass was cracked, but I could make out the image: Mrs. Lambert, Mr. Lambert, and a little girl between them. She looked like Emily, but not exactly. Her hair was lighter. Her eyes were gray, not brown, and the date on the photo said 2016. When I went back downstairs, Emily was awake, sitting at the kitchen table. "Did you find her?" she asked. My blood ran cold.
"Find who?"
She smiled faintly. "My sister." I stared at her. "You don't have a sister." Her eyes darkened. "Not anymore." I didn't sleep that night. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps again, heavier this time. I grabbed my phone and crept to my door, peeking through the small gap underneath. Shadows moved past in the hallway. One tall, one small. The taller one was walking ahead, but the smaller one was following close behind, almost gliding. When they turned the corner, I opened my door just a crack. The hallway was empty. Then I noticed it. The attic door was open. I could see the faintest light spilling down the steps. I told myself to stay put. I knew I should stay put. But something, curiosity, fear, something deeper, pushed me forward. The attic was colder than before. My breath fogged in front of me. The light was coming from a single candle on the floor. Next to it, Emily sat cross-legged, humming softly. She didn't look surprised to see me. "She likes when you come up," she said. "Emily, what are you doing?" "It's the middle of the night. She doesn't sleep." The voice didn't sound like hers, and flatter, almost distant. I stepped closer, and my eyes adjusted to the dark. There was something behind her, something standing near the crib. A shape, faint, like heat shimmer in the air. I blinked and it was gone. "Who are you talking about?" I whispered. Emily smiled. "Mummy, she misses you." My chest tightened. "Emily, your mum's downstairs. Go to bed." She shook her head slowly. "Not that one." I don't remember going back to my room. One moment I was in the attic. The next I was sitting on my bed, shaking. The candlelight still flickered behind my eyes. I told myself I'd imagined it. The shadow, the voice, all of it. But when I woke the next morning, the attic door was wide open. The mobile above the crib was spinning on its own. Mrs. Lambert noticed me staring at it during breakfast. You went up there, didn't you? She said. I froze. Yes. I heard something. She closed her eyes, pressing her fingers to her temples. You shouldn't have. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then tell me, I said. What's going on here? Who's the girl in that photo? Why does Emily? She isn't Emily. The words came out like a scream. Then quieter, trembling. Not anymore. My stomach dropped. She looked broken, her face pale and thin. We lost her. Our real Emily, 2 years ago, drowned in the garden pond. We tried to move on. But after the funeral, the crying started. We thought it was grief. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes. Then she came back. I stared at her. Who? The thing upstairs. I wanted to leave right then. Pack my bags, walk out, never look back. But I didn't. Because when I turned toward the stairs, I heard it again, the crying. Only this time it wasn't faint. It was right there. Mrs. Lambert's expression crumpled. Don't go to her, she whispered. Please. That's what she wants, but I couldn't help it. I ran up the stairs anyway. The sound led me to the child's room. The door was closed, the light off. I pushed it open. The bed was empty. The crying came from the closet. Slow hitching sobs. I hesitated, then pulled the door open. Emily sat inside, curled up in the dark, her nightgown wet and clinging to her skin. She looked up at me, trembling. I can't stop it, she whispered. She gets in. Her voice wasn't her own. It was layered and like two voices speaking at once. One child. One woman. Then she looked straight at me, eyes wide and glassy. She says, "You're next." I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over a toy. Emily didn't move. She just stayed there, watching me with that double voice humming through her chest. I ran to Mrs. Lambert's room, empty. The front door was locked from the inside. I tried to call for help, but my phone wouldn't turn on. When I looked up at the staircase again, Emily was standing at the top. Her head tilted slightly, her hair dripping onto the carpet. "Don't leave me," she said softly. "You promised. I don't remember what happened next." I must have blacked out because when I woke it was morning. Mrs. Lambert was gone. The house was silent. Emily was sitting at the kitchen table eating cereal. When she saw me, she smiled sweetly. "Good morning, Mummy." I couldn't speak. My mouth felt dry, my skin cold. On the counter beside her bowl was the photo I'd found in the attic. Except now there were 4 people in it. The father, the mother, the little girl, and me standing beside them smiling. The morning after I found the photo, the world felt too still. Rain had stopped, but the sky outside was the color of bruised paper. The air inside the Lambert house hung heavy, as if the walls were holding their breath. Mrs. Lambert never came downstairs. Her phone sat on the counter, buzzing once, twice, then going quiet. Emily ate in silence. She hummed the lullaby under her breath while stirring her cereal. I kept watching her, waiting for some flicker of recognition, but she just smiled like everything was perfectly normal. "Your mom's still sleeping?" I asked. She nodded without looking up. She said she's very tired. Something about the way she said it made my stomach tighten. By noon, the house had grown colder. I wandered from room to room trying to make sense of what I'd stepped into. There were marks on the door frames, small pencil lines where someone had once measured a child's height. Dates beside them stopped 2 years ago. In the study, I found a folder on the desk. School records, medical notes, therapy reports. The name at the top was Emily Lambert, dated before the girl I was caring for would have even been born. The last page was a newspaper clipping. Local girl 7, dies in accident at family home. My hands shook as I put it down. Maybe grief had built this house the way it was now. Sealed rooms, missing photos, rules that made no sense. Maybe Emily wasn't a ghost at all. Maybe she was a replacement, a child found, adopted, reshaped into the image of the one they'd lost. But then who had whispered outside my door? That evening, the lights flickered just before dinner. Emily laughed softly. "She's coming," she said. "Who?" I asked. "Mummy." The light steadied again, and she giggled like it was a game. I tried to smile to keep it light. "Your mum's upstairs. She'll be down soon." Emily tilted her head. "Not that, Mummy." The words made the hairs on my arms rise. I told myself it was imagination, grief echoing through a child who'd overheard too many adult conversations. Still, I couldn't shake the chill. At 9 p.m., I decided to check on Mrs. Lambert. Her door was closed. I knocked softly. No answer. When I opened it, the room was dark except for the streetlight filtering through the curtains. The bed was neatly made. Her clothes were gone. On the nightstand lay a note. The handwriting was jagged, rushed, "I can't do it again. Please don't let her be alone." I sat on the edge of the bed until the light outside dimmed. Somewhere below me, the old house creaked, settling into the quiet. The note trembled in my hands. "She's gone," I whispered to the empty room. "You're all I've got now, kid." I found Emily sitting on the staircase, knees pulled to her chest. She looked small in the half-dark. "Where's your mom?" I asked. She pointed upward. "With the other one." "Emily," I said gently, kneeling in front of her. "There's no one else here. It's just you and me tonight." She looked past me toward the hallway mirror. "Then why is she standing there?" I turned instinctively and saw my own reflection. But for a second I swore there was another figure behind me. Not clear, just the suggestion of a woman's shape in the dim glass. When I blinked, it was gone. I laughed it off, a thin sound that didn't feel like mine. "See, just me." Emily didn't laugh. She whispered, "She likes you." The storm rolled in after midnight. Wind rattled the windows and rain swept across the glass in thick sheets. I couldn't sleep. The note burned in my mind. "Don't let her be alone." At 3 a.m., a soft thump came from upstairs, followed by another. I hesitated, then climbed the steps. The hallway lights flickered again. Emily's door was open a crack. Inside, she was awake, sitting on the floor in her nightdress. The little lamp beside her bed glowed faintly, casting a halo around her. "She's sad?" she said without looking up. I crouched beside her. "Who's sad?" She pointed toward the window. The curtains were swaying, though the window was closed. Rain streaked down the glass, and through the reflection, I thought I saw movement. Just a faint outline of someone standing in the garden, still and small. "Emily, come away from there." When I pulled the curtain shut, she grabbed my hand. Her fingers were freezing. "Don't make her go," she whispered. "If she goes, I'll be alone again." That broke something in me. I'd come here to work, not to love. But I couldn't stop seeing how lonely she looked, how desperate she was for someone to stay. So I stayed. I read her stories until her eyes drooped. I told her I wasn't leaving, not tonight. When she finally slept, I sat by the window listening to the storm fade. The reflection in the glass was just me again, tired, pale, but real. I whispered, "Whoever you are, she's safe. You can rest now." The air seemed to ease, the cold lifting. I almost believed that was the end of it. Morning came gray and silent. The house felt lighter somehow. But Mrs. Lambert never returned, and there was no number for Mr. Lambert that worked. So I stayed another day. Then another. I told myself it was temporary, just until someone came. Weeks passed that way. The world outside kept moving, but inside the house time blurred. The clocks ticked, yet the days folded into one another like pages stuck together. Every night at 3:11, the floorboards creaked above my room. Sometimes I heard a faint lullaby and sometimes I didn't, but I no longer felt afraid. The sound was almost gentle now, like a heartbeat through the walls. I tried to piece together what had really happened. Maybe Mrs. Lambert had created a world she could survive in. A new daughter, a replacement au pair, endless routines to keep grief at bay. And when she couldn't bear the lie anymore, she walked away. Or maybe she hadn't left at all. Maybe she was still upstairs somewhere behind one of those locked doors, waiting for someone else to take her place. I don't know. The longer I stayed, the less certain I became of what was memory and what was dream. One evening, while tidying Emily's room, I found another drawing on her desk. This time it was simple, 2 figures holding hands. The child had brown hair. The woman had mine. Underneath, she'd written in careful block letters, "Mummy plus me." When I asked her about it, she just smiled and said, "You promised." Now sometimes, when the city noise fades and the house settles into its quiet heartbeat, I hear faint humming again. It isn't frightening anymore. It's familiar, like a lullaby meant for both of us. I tell myself the same thing every night before I sleep. I'm not replacing anyone. I'm just helping until someone else comes. But I don't really believe that, because the photos in the hallway have changed. There's a new one now, fresh frame, glossy print. A woman and a girl standing in front of the house, smiling in the pale sun. And the woman in the picture looks exactly like me. If you ever find yourself answering an ad for a live-in nanny on an old London street with ivy on the windows and a pond in the garden, maybe keep walking. Some houses don't need staff. They need witnesses. And once you've seen what lives in their quiet, you never quite leave. The first night I heard the knocking, I thought it was the wind. The house was old enough for it. Timbers that moaned when the temperature dropped, windows that rattled in their frames. The wind came in long sighs, brushing through the gaps under the doors like someone whispering from the other side. But this wasn't that. It was rhythmic. 3 soft knocks, a pause, then 2 more, lighter, right above my room. I lay there for a while, counting my own heartbeat, trying to convince myself it was pipes, or maybe one of the kids sleepwalking. But the sound didn't move. It stayed fixed directly above me, coming from the locked room I'd been told not to enter. When I first arrived, Mrs. Vaughn had walked me through the entire house, her shoes clacking sharply on the old wood floors. Everything smelled faintly of polish and lavender. "This is the children's wing," she'd said briskly, opening each door in turn. "Your room, there's the bathroom and storage. That one at the end," she paused, hand hovering near the last door. "That stays locked. Don't try the handle. The key's gone and the floorboards in there aren't safe." I'd nodded because what else do you say? But now, lying awake at 2 a.m., I couldn't stop replaying the way she'd said it. "The key's gone. Not we lost it, it's gone." The next morning, I brought it up casually over breakfast. "I think something's loose upstairs," I said, pouring juice for Oliver and June. "Maybe a shutter or a door banging. I heard it last night." Mrs. Vaughn didn't look up from her phone. "The wind carries in strange ways out here." Mr. Vaughn, hidden behind the newspaper, muttered, "That room's been sealed for years. Nothing up there to bang." "Sealed?" I asked. He glanced over the edge of the paper. "Old storage. Don't worry yourself." Mrs. Vaughn gave a tight smile, the kind meant to close a conversation. But June, the younger one, whispered, "That's not true." Her mother's head snapped up. "June." June pressed her lips together, eyes dropping to her cereal. Mr. Vaughn folded his paper. "Eat your breakfast." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. I didn't ask again. By afternoon, the sound was forgotten or buried under the routine of my day. The kids had lessons, snacks, screen time, then dinner. The Vaughns were polite but distant. The kind of parents who spoke through their children, not to them. Every room in the house felt curated, lifeless, like a show home. Even the family photos were too perfect, the kind that never looked real. Only the locked door felt alive. Every time I passed it, I felt a small pull in my chest, the way static lifts your hair. The brass handle was dull, tarnished, but sometimes I thought I could see a faint smudge around it. Like fingerprints. That night I left my lamp on. At 1:43 a.m., I woke to the sound again. Knocking. 3 slow taps. Then 2 quick ones. I sat up, heart thudding. This time it wasn't above me. It was down the hall. I got out of bed, moving carefully, trying not to make the floorboards creak. The hallway was dim, just the faint glow of the landing light seeping in under the door. As I stepped closer, the sound stopped. I waited, then faintly, scratching, like something brushing against the inside of wood. "Hello?" I whispered before I could stop myself. Silence. Then a single knock. Something in me said to go back to bed. I almost did. But I noticed the smallest thing. A draft, cool air flowing from the bottom of the locked door. The same lavender scent Mrs. Vaughn used everywhere in the house, only stronger, sourer, like it had gone stale. When I leaned down, I thought I heard a voice behind the door. A child's voice, whispering something I couldn't make out. Then June screamed from her room. By the time I reached her, she was sitting upright in bed, crying. "What happened?" I asked, pulling her into my arms. She was shaking all over. "She was in the hall," she whispered. "Who was?" June looked past me toward the doorway. "The girl." I turned immediately, but the hallway was empty. Just shadows and the faint hum of the house. I tried to calm her. "You had a nightmare," June shook her head. "She said her room was cold. She said you could open it." "June, she said she wants her things back." Before I could answer, Mrs. Vaughn appeared in the doorway, robe drawn tight, eyes sharp. "What's going on?" "She had a nightmare," I said quickly. Mrs. Vaughn's gaze flicked to her daughter. You didn't open the door, did you? No, I said, of course not. Her stare lingered on me a little too long. Make sure you don't. Then she turned, pulling June out of bed by the hand. I'll handle her from here. I watched them disappear down the hall, the lavender smell following behind. When I looked back toward the locked door, the draft had stopped. The next morning, the Vaughns acted like nothing had happened. June looked tired, though, her eyes ringed with dark smudges. When I asked if she was okay, she just said quietly, "She's not angry at you." "Not yet," Oliver rolled his eyes. "Don't start that again," June whispered. "You didn't hear her." "Hear who?" I asked. "The one who lives upstairs," she said. Before we moved in, she didn't like being alone. Later that day, while the kids were in the garden, I walked back up to the locked door. I knew I shouldn't. But something about the stillness of the hall made me feel like I was being invited. The air near the door was colder again. I pressed my palm against it, cool, almost damp. The faint smell of lavender mixed with something metallic like rust. I tried the handle. It didn't budge, but the metal clicked softly like it wasn't fully stuck. There was a keyhole, dark and small. When I leaned close, I felt a puff of air from inside, then just barely a sound, a breath. I jerked back so fast I nearly tripped. My heart pounded in my throat. The air felt heavy, charged. Downstairs, I heard Mrs. Vaughn call my name, her voice carrying sharp and clear. I turned away from the door and went to her. She was waiting in the kitchen, hands clasped tightly. "I saw you upstairs. I was just, you're curious," she said softly, interrupting me. "That's natural. But curiosity is dangerous in this house." Her tone was different now, less scolding, more tired. "That room belonged to our daughter," she continued, eyes fixed somewhere far away. "Before Oliver and June, before this house was quiet." I froze. "You had another?" Her lips tightened. "She's gone. That's all you need to know. The room stays closed for everyone's sake." She left before I could ask more, but her words stuck with me. Gone. Not past. Not lost. Gone. That night, I dreamt I was standing at the locked door again. The lavender smell was thick enough to choke on. I could hear a child laughing behind it, soft, muffled, distant. When I reached for the handle, it turned easily beneath my hand. Inside was a girl sitting on the floor, her back to me. She was tracing circles on the wood with her finger, humming that same 3-2 rhythm I'd heard in the knocks. When she turned around, her eyes weren't angry. They looked sad. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. Then the floorboards gave way beneath me, and I fell through the dark. I woke up gasping, tangled in sheets, my skin damp with sweat. The lamp was still on, but the air in the room felt cold enough to burn, and from the ceiling above, just once faintly, I heard it again. 3 knocks. A pause, 2 more. I didn't tell Mrs. Vaughn about the dream. I told myself it was just nerves, the kind that come from living somewhere too quiet, too far from everything familiar. But after that night, the air in the house felt different, denser. Even the light seemed strange. The windows faced east, yet mornings never brought warmth. Instead, a pale silver hue drifted through the halls, catching dust motes like falling snow, and always, that locked door at the end of the corridor, waiting. By the 3rd week, the routine had settled into something that looked like peace. The children studied. The Vaughns worked. I cooked, cleaned, kept the rhythm. But beneath it all was an itch, the need to know. Each night when the house went still, I'd find myself staring at the ceiling, imagining what could possibly be in that sealed room. If it was just storage, why not clear it? If it was unsafe, why not board it up? I told myself it was none of my business. Yet every time I passed it, my hand hovered near the handle. The faintest vibration lingered in the metal like a pulse. A few days later, Mrs. Vaughn left for a conference. Mr. Vaughn was supposed to take over the evening routines, but he rarely left his study. I could hear him pacing at odd hours, muttering, sometimes laughing quietly to himself. The children noticed. "Dad doesn't like the upstairs," Oliver said one afternoon while we were doing homework at the kitchen table. "Why not?" I asked. He shrugged. "Mum says it makes him remember things." "Like what?" "She never says." June was doodling in the margins of her workbook, head tilted. "She says the house listens," she murmured. Oliver groaned. "You always say weird stuff." She didn't look up. "Because it's true. That night I woke again. No knocks this time. Only silence so thick it made my ears ring. I got out of bed and went into the hallway. Something had changed. The air was warmer, faintly perfumed. Lavender again, but subtle now, almost pleasant. A thin line of light seeped from beneath the locked door. For a long moment I stood there, every instinct screaming to walk away. Then curiosity won. I crouched and looked through the keyhole. All I saw was darkness. Then movement. A shadow, quick like someone turning just out of view. My breath fogged the keyhole. I pulled back fast, heart hammering. When I stood, the light under the door had vanished. The next morning, Mr. Vaughn came to breakfast looking pale, his eyes red-rimmed. He barely spoke until the children left for school. Then he said quietly, "You shouldn't be up there after dark." I froze. "You saw me?" He nodded. "There are cameras. Old ones, from when this was a care home. They still work. I check them sometimes." I waited for him to scold me, but instead he sighed. "I don't blame you. Everyone's curious at first." He rubbed his temples. "My wife thinks she's protecting us. Maybe she is. But that room, it does things to people." "What kind of things?" His gaze drifted toward the ceiling. "It keeps them remembering." That afternoon, while the children were playing outside, I looked through the old filing cabinet in the office. I wasn't even sure what I was searching for. Maybe some hint of what the Vaughns were hiding. Most of the papers were ordinary. Tax forms, house deeds, receipts. Then I found a folder labeled St. Agatha's Residential Care. Inside were inspection reports and patient lists. I skimmed until a name jumped out at me. Catherine Vaughn, Room 7. The address matched this house. Room 7, the locked one upstairs. I read the report twice. It was dated 12 years earlier, when the property had operated as a private facility. The note was brief. Patient transferred to hospital following incident. Room sealed pending renovation. There was no mention of what the incident was. My throat went dry. If Catherine was a relative, that would explain the Vaughn's silence. Maybe this was less about haunting and more about guilt, a place heavy with what families don't say aloud. But the detail that unsettled me most was the handwriting at the bottom of the page. The signature read, Dr. Henry Vaughn, Mr. Vaughn's own name. That evening, when he came home, I tried to ask casually, "Was this house really a care home once?" He hesitated. "Who told you that?" "I saw a file in the office," he exhaled slowly. "It was a long time ago. We bought the place after everything closed down. My father ran it then. I was finishing medical school. So Catherine was a patient," he said, cutting me off. "A troubled girl. My father couldn't help her." His voice cracked just slightly. "No one could." Then he looked up at me, eyes raw. "Please don't go in that room." "Promise me," I promised. And I meant it. For about 24 hours. The next night, something changed again. It wasn't noise this time, or light. It was a smell. Lavender, and stronger than before, flooding the hallway so suddenly it made me cough. I opened my door and saw the source immediately. A trail of small purple petals leading down the hall toward the locked room. Someone had scattered them, one by one. I called softly, "Oliver? June?" No answer. When I reached the end of the hall, I saw that the petals stopped right at the door, and under the faint crack of wood, something gleamed. A key. It was small, brass, old-fashioned. I bent down, touched it, half expecting it to vanish. It didn't. It was solid, warm, as though it had just been held. I picked it up, my hands shaking. Behind me, a floorboard creaked. I spun around, but no one was there. Only the faint smell of lavender and my own breath, quick and shallow. For an hour, I sat in my room, staring at the key on my nightstand. Every logical part of me said, "Give it to them." Forget it, but another voice whispered, "They lied. You deserve to know what you're living above." By 2 a.m., the decision was made. I stepped into the hall, key clenched in my fist. The house felt awake, humming quietly like an animal holding still. The lock accepted the key with an easy click. No resistance, no squeal of metal. I turned the handle and pushed. The door opened halfway before something caught. A chain bolted from the inside. Through the gap, warm air rushed out, thick with lavender and dust. I couldn't see much, just the edge of an armchair, a lamp, and the corner of a mirror covered with a sheet. And then, the unmistakable sound of breathing. Slow, uneven, human. I stepped back, heart hammering, and the door swung shut on its own, the latch clicking softly into place. My fingers fumbled the key. I didn't even remember dropping it, but when I knelt to pick it up, it was gone. The hall was empty again. I stood there until dawn, listening to the quiet. When the first light crept through the window, the lavender smell faded. The door looked ordinary once more, but I knew now, whatever was in that room wasn't memory or wind or the past. It was someone alive. By sunrise, I'd convinced myself it couldn't have been real. The key, the breathing, all of it had to be exhaustion, suggestion. Houses this old breathe differently. I'd read that somewhere. They expand and contract with the cold. But every time I tried to reason it away, I remembered the warmth of that air spilling through the gap. Someone had been on the other side. I couldn't let it go. That morning I told Mrs. Vaughn I wasn't feeling well and stayed behind while she drove the kids to school. The moment the car disappeared down the drive, I went back upstairs. The locked door looked just as it always did. Ordinary, plain, lifeless. The brass handle gleamed dully in the morning light. I pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. Still, I whispered, "Hello?" Silence. Then faintly something that might have been movement, a scuff. Then another. I pulled away, heart pounding. Who's in there? No answer. Only the quiet shifting of air through a crack somewhere above me. Downstairs, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the ceiling. If someone was living up there, the Vaughns had to know. Maybe it was a relative, a sister, an aunt, someone needing care. Maybe sealed was their way of saying hidden. It would explain the secrecy, the tension, the lavender. That scent could cover medicine or illness. But then why the lies? Why not just tell me? When Mrs. Vaughn came back that afternoon, she looked different. Her face was pale, tight around the mouth. She didn't ask about my sick day. She just said quietly, "I hope you didn't go upstairs." Something in her tone stopped me from lying. "I heard something," I said. "There's someone in there." Her eyes flicked to mine, then away. "You didn't see anyone?" "No, but Then you didn't hear anything." She smiled, brittle. "That room is closed. That's all you need to know." Her voice trembled on the word closed. She set her bag down and left the room before I could say another word. That night, the sound came again. Not knocking, not footsteps, but humming. A low, tuneless hum drifting faintly down the hall. It wasn't a child's voice. It wasn't old either, it was tired. I opened my door and froze. The light at the end of the corridor was on. I hadn't turned it on. As I stepped closer, I saw the handle of the locked door moving. Slowly, gently. Someone on the other side was testing it. My throat went dry. "Hello?" The handle stopped. Then a voice. Quiet, hoarse, almost a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." I ran back to my room and slammed the door. I sat against it until morning, heart racing, every sound of the house amplified. The groan of wood, the tick of the clock, the faintest shift of air. When dawn finally broke, I packed my bag. I was ready to leave, to quit, to walk until I reached the next train, but when I went downstairs, the front door was bolted. From the inside, I turned the latch. It didn't move. Every other exit was the same. When I found Mr. Vaughn in the kitchen, he didn't even look surprised. "The wind warped the frames," he said. "We're having them repaired next week." I wanted to believe him. I did. But his hands were trembling when he poured his coffee, and his eyes kept darting toward the ceiling. Later that day, while he worked in his study, I found June standing at the foot of the stairs. She was holding something small, a brass key. "Where did you get that?" I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then softly, "It fell out of Daddy's pocket." She looked up at me, her face pale. "You're not supposed to open it." "Why not?" "Because she forgets she's not meant to talk." "Who?" June's eyes filled with tears. "The lady in the room. She's sick, but sometimes she thinks she's us." Before I could ask more, Mrs. Vaughn's voice echoed from the hall. "June, dinner!" The girl slipped the key into my hand and ran. I stood there, the metal burning against my palm. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep. The house felt different again, heavy, electric, like a storm about to break. I crept up the stairs, the key cold in my hand. When I reached the door, I paused, listening. No breathing this time. No humming. Only silence. I slid the key into the lock and turned it slowly. It fit perfectly. The latch gave way with a soft click. I pushed the door open. The smell hit first. Lavender, but strong enough to sting my throat. The air inside was warm and dry. The curtains were drawn, blocking out the moonlight. But a lamp glowed dimly on a dresser. There was no one in sight. The room was neat, carefully arranged. A bed with crisp white sheets, a tray with a glass of water, a book lying open face down, and on the walls, photos, hundreds of them, every single one of me. I staggered backward. The faces stared back, me folding laundry, me walking the children to school, me asleep in my bed. Some were from angles I didn't recognize, through doorways from behind. A camera's flash frozen in the reflection of my own eyes. I turned toward the corner. A small table held a stack of notebooks, each labeled with dates. My first day, my second week, my third. The most recent one was open. The handwriting was small, precise. She looks like her. The same way of standing at the sink. The same way she hums. Maybe if she stays long enough, she'll remember. My chest tightened. I flipped the page. Tonight I'll ask if she remembers the pond. I slammed the notebook shut. Behind me, the door creaked. I spun around. Mrs. Vaughn stood in the doorway, barefoot, still wearing her nightdress. Her expression was calm, almost relieved. "I asked you not to open it," she said softly. "Who wrote these?" My voice shook. She looked past me toward the wall of photographs. "You shouldn't have come in here. Who took them?" "Henry did, Mr. Vaughn." She stepped closer, eyes glistening. He thought if he could capture her again, piece by piece, she'd come back. "You look like her. You move like her. You even sound like her when you hum." I stared at her. "Who are you talking about?" Her lips trembled. "My sister. She was the first au pair. She drowned here. He said it was an accident, but he's been building this room ever since, filling it with replacements." My stomach twisted. "He's been watching me?" Mrs. Vaughn nodded, tears streaking her face. "He thinks if he can get it perfect this time, she'll stop calling from the water." "But it never works," I felt sick. "Then why did you let me stay?" She whispered. "Because if you leave, he'll find another." A sound rose from below. The creak of the study door, footsteps on the stairs. Mrs. Vaughn's eyes widened. "Go," I shook my head, frozen. "He'll see. Go!" she hissed, shoving me toward the hallway. I ran. I locked myself in my room, pressing my back to the door. Footsteps passed outside, heavy, deliberate. A knock, then Mr. Vaughn's voice, calm and low. "You've seen too much." I didn't answer. "I told you curiosity was dangerous," he said. "But it's not your fault. She draws people in." The footsteps stopped. A pause, then, "Don't worry. I'll make it right this time." The hallway went quiet. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I waited for light. At dawn, I crept to the window and saw Mrs. Vaughn's car gone, tracks fresh in the wet gravel. I don't know if she ran. I don't know if she's alive, but I do know this. When I looked back toward the hall, the locked door stood open again, wide and waiting. Inside, the walls were bare. The photos were gone. By the time the sun rose, the house was silent again. Too silent. I waited until the clock downstairs chimed 7 before I moved. Every creak of the floorboards felt deafening. My body ached from staying rigid all night. The first thing I noticed when I stepped into the hall was the air. It smelled wrong. Not lavender anymore, but something metallic, sharp, like rain on rust. The second thing was that the locked door, the one I'd opened just hours before, was now perfectly closed. No sign it had ever been touched. I wanted to believe Mrs. Vaughn had taken everything, photographs, notebooks, and fled. But deep down, I knew she hadn't gone far. Downstairs, the children's cereal bowl sat untouched on the table, 2 glasses of orange juice, a note written in rushed handwriting. "Gone to town for errands. Stay inside until we return." My stomach tightened. The day dragged on, stretched thin with waiting. No calls, no visitors, just the steady hum of the fridge and the whisper of wind through the chimney. By mid-afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bag, grabbed my phone, and tried the front door again, still bolted. The windows on the ground floor had been screwed shut. Even the small one in the laundry room, tiny, high, had new metal hinges. Someone had secured the house overnight. I went back upstairs, half hoping it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe they'd panicked, thinking I'd break another rule. Maybe they just wanted to keep me safe. But the moment I reached the top step, the floor vibrated faintly under my feet, as if something heavy had moved behind the locked door. I froze. Hello? No answer. Just the low whir of something electrical, muffled. A projector? A fan? I couldn't stop myself. I pressed my ear against the wood. What I heard chilled me. A voice. My own. You shouldn't be here. The same words I'd heard through the door days ago, only now I could tell. It was a recording. I ran downstairs, heart hammering, and found the fuse box. The labels were mismatched, but one switch was marked Room 7, Power. I flipped it off. The house gave a small sigh, like air leaving lungs. The humming stopped. When I turned around, Henry Vaughn was standing in the doorway. He looked calm. Too calm. Why did you do that? He asked. I'm leaving, I said. My voice barely worked. He smiled faintly. There's nowhere to go. Not yet. He stepped closer, and I saw the dark circles under his eyes, the small tremor in his hands. You've become part of this, whether you like it or not. That room needs balance. It remembers every sound, every movement. It's like a... Stop, I said. You've been recording me. He didn't deny it. It's the only way to keep her alive. Memory fades unless you feed it. I backed toward the kitchen, gripping my phone. Where's your wife? She understands now. She left, didn't she? He tilted his head, almost curious. She went where she always does, out of reach. I moved toward the side door, pretending to adjust my bag. You need help, he laughed softly. So did she. I bolted. The latch on the side door finally gave after 3 hard tugs. I ran outside, shoes slipping on damp gravel. The cold air hit like water. I didn't look back until I reached the gate. The house loomed against the gray sky, windows dark except one, the small one above the hall. A shadow moved there, slow and deliberate. It wasn't Henry. It was smaller. June. She lifted her hand in a wave that didn't look like a wave at all. It looked like a warning. The nearest road was nearly a mile away. I ran until I saw a passing delivery van and flagged it down, breathless. The driver, a middle-aged man with kind eyes. Let me climb in. He asked if I was okay. I said yes, though the truth trembled just under my skin. When I looked back one last time, the house was barely visible through the trees, but I could swear I saw movement in the upstairs window again. Another figure standing perfectly still behind the glass. 3 weeks later, I was staying in a small rented flat above a bakery in Oxford. The Vaughns hadn't called. No police had shown up. I told myself it was over. But every night I dreamt of that locked room, the scent of lavender, the sound of my own voice whispering from behind the door. Then one morning, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a single photo. Me standing at the kitchen sink of the Vaughn's house, sunlight on my shoulder. Scrawled on the back, in handwriting I recognized. Perfect posture. Perfect angle. Room ready, I went to the police. They took the envelope, filed a report, promised to look into it. Weeks passed, nothing. I tried to move on, new job, new city. But some nights when the wind hits the window just right, I hear that faint hum again, not from outside. From inside the walls, a vibration, low and steady, like a tape spinning somewhere unseen. Last night it got louder. I unplugged everything, laptop, phone charger, even the fridge. The sound didn't stop. It followed me from room to room, softer when I moved, louder when I froze. I pressed my ear to the plaster, and beneath it, faint but unmistakable, came my own voice, echoed and slowed, as if played from an old recording. You shouldn't be here. I'm writing this now because I think I know what's happening. The recordings weren't just memories, they were blueprints. Henry said the room needed balance. Maybe he built it to trap what the house couldn't hold anymore. Faces, voices, gestures. Maybe every photo, every sound was a way of teaching the walls who to mimic next. And maybe when I left, the house just kept building without me. I don't go upstairs anymore in this flat. There's a small door near the ceiling for attic access. It has no lock. 2 nights ago it was closed when I went to bed. When I woke up, it was open a few inches. The faint smell of lavender drifted out.